Ever hear the expression, third time's a charm? Well, the lady in this episode had a run of bad luck at sea that leveled out after the third time. While she is a fairly obscure woman, her story is remarkable and she wasn't alone in these adventures. And if you stay tuned to the end, I'll share a bonus story with you as well. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Me, Myself, and I History, where weird history and strange happenings in the universe are always on the menu. My name is Seraphim. In today's episode, we're going to look at the life of a remarkable woman. While her life was, overall, rather mundane and unremarkable, she did have some very remarkable events take place while she was present. Let me introduce you to Violet Jessop. Violet Jessop was born in Bahia Blanca, Argentina on 2 October 1887 to Irish immigrants. She was the oldest of 9 children, 6 of whom survived to adulthood. This wasn't unusual in the late 19th century. What was very unusual in the 19th century was that she contracted tuberculosis, which is normally pretty fatal without antibiotic treatment, but somehow she overcame it and survived into adulthood. At the age of 16, Violet's father died from complications to surgery. The family moved to England, and her mother took up work as an ocean liner stewardess. That left Violet to take care of her siblings, as well as to attend school herself. Then, when her mother became ill, Violet left school and took up her mother's trade. Being a very pretty lady, she had to dress down and give a more plain appearance in order to get hired. Violet's first stewardess job was with the Royal Mail Steam Packet Company at the age of 21. Her first billet was on board the RMS Orinoco. The Orinoco was launched the year before Violet was born. It had both square-rig sails as well as a triple expansion steam power plant. It was the sole example of its type made for the Royal Mail Line, though it inspired other ships. The ship collided with the Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse, a ship of the Norddeutsche Lloyd Line, in 1903. A court of inquiry found the Kaiser Wilhelm to be wholly at fault. Violet wasn't aboard because she did not set to sea until 1908, but it seems in hindsight to be almost a pathetic fallacy predicting her career at sea. In 1911, Violet began working for the White Star Line. White Star Line was different. Many companies at the time vied for the commercial passenger shipping business from various parts of the British Empire to the Americas and back, advertising the speed of their ships. White Star Line banked on the comfort of their ships for both their wealthy patrons of both first and second class and for the immigrants in steerage class accommodations alike. Even the immigrant who was traveling on a budget was offered some degree of comfort on White Star Line ships that other lines didn't offer. For example, a menu for one of White Star's ships offered a variety of food choices in a shifting menu, even in the steerage class for breakfast and dinner each day, with a smaller, more consistent variety at lunch and for an evening snack. This would have been the same menu offered to the non-officer employees on board ship. With White Star Line, Violet Jessop was first billeted aboard the RMS Olympic, the largest luxury ship of the day in 1911. Violet was on board for the RMS Olympic's 5th voyage. On 20 September 1911, Olympic was transiting the Solent, the channel between the Isle of Wight and the English mainland. Transiting nearby was the protected cruiser HMS Hawke. The Olympic required a much larger turn radius than the commander of the Hawke had predicted, and the two collided. The Hawke's prow, which was designed to sink ships by ramming them, collided with the Olympic's starboard aft hull in 2 places, one above the waterline and one below it. While there were no deaths or serious injuries, the prow of the Hawke had to be completely replaced, and a significant number of shipwrights had to be transferred from Titanic, which was still under construction, to the Olympic for repairs, thus delaying the Titanic's launch. The 2 watertight compartments flooded, and the ship was aft heavy, but was able to return to port under her own power. Another person on board the Olympic that day was engine stoker Arthur John Priest. Arthur was just a few months younger than Violet and was a native of Southampton, England. We'll get back to him in just a few moments. Just over 6 months later, Violet was reassigned to the newest ship in the White Star Line, the RMS Titanic, on 10 April 1912. Her duties aboard the Titanic would have been identical with those on the Olympic. In fact, she probably already knew her way around the ship since it was the same design as the Olympic. Of course, we all know how this story ends. At 11:40 p.m. on 13 April 1912, a lookout spotted an iceberg directly in the path of the ship. The first officer, William Murdoch, ordered the ship steered around the iceberg and engines put at full reverse throttle, but it was too late. The iceberg collided with the starboard side of the ship. It didn't puncture the hull, but instead buckled it, allowing water to gush past the rivets. Soon it was evident that the ship was sinking and unlikely to be saved. Around 2 in the morning, finally the water started to wash over the deck and began to fill the ship at an extremely fast rate before she broke in two and dropped 2.4 miles or 3.7 kilometers into her watery grave. Violet was ordered to the deck quickly. She was told to serve as an example for non-English speakers about wearing a life jacket and getting in the lifeboats. She helped women and children on the boats before being ordered onto one herself. Just before being lowered into the water, a woman thrust her baby into Violet's arms. Violet's lifeboat was picked up by the RMS Carpathia the next day. At some point, a woman on the Carpathia's deck recognized her and the baby, grabbed the baby from her, and moved away quickly. We can only presume it was a grateful mother reunited with her still living child. Remember Arthur John Priest? He survived the sinking too. It was his second. His first was on the RMS Asturias 4 years earlier. He would be married 3 years later and eventually had 3 sons. Archie Jewell, one of Titanic's lookouts, had been relieved of duty by another lookout an hour and 40 minutes before the collision. He had been employed by White Star Line for 8 years already. This brings us to our third ship, the RMS and later HMHS Britannic. HMHS meaning His Majesty's Hospital Ship, of course. At the outbreak of World War I, Violet was a stewardess with nursing duties with the British Red Cross. When the RMS Britannic was requisitioned by the Royal Navy as a hospital ship, it had been redesigned with lessons learned from the sinking of the Titanic. It was considered to be significantly safer, though no one was calling it unsinkable at this point. Violet was assigned to this ship, which made regular runs between the Dardanelles and Southampton, England. The HMHS Britannic had already made 5 successful runs as a hospital ship between the Middle Eastern Theater of Operations and the UK. She stopped at the port of Naples, Italy on 17 November 1916 for her usual fueling and watering stop on the way to the Greek island of Limnos in the northern Aegean Sea. After harboring overnight to wait out a storm, the Britannic set out again. On 21 November, while in the Kia Channel at 8:12 a.m. local time, the Britannic hit a German mine that had been placed recently by a mine-laying boat. The location of the mine detonation meant the ship was rapidly filling with water, and watertight bulkheads were ruptured. The captain attempted to beach the ship by ordering one screw at full rotations and the other slower in order to steer the ship, which had lost its steering gears. Jessop and others were quickly put into life vests, and lifeboats were rapidly lowered into the sea. Seeing the aft of the ship begin rising into the air near her lifeboat, Violet plunged into the sea just as the screw smashed her lifeboat into pieces. She received a serious head injury in the process, but again survived the sinking. So did Priest. It was his third sinking, the second being the HMS Alcantara, an ocean liner that had been converted into an armed merchant cruiser the previous February. Jewell also survived this sinking. He and Priest were both assigned to the SS and later HMHS Donegal, another hospital ship which was sunk by a German U-boat the following April. Jewell did not survive that sinking, but Priest did, earning him the nickname of the Unsinkable Stoker. In 1920, Violet set out to sea as a stewardess once again, first with White Star Line, then with the Red Star Line, before returning to the Royal Mail Line once more. In 1934, she married John Lewis, a fellow steward, and divorced him a year later. He had also served aboard the RMS Olympic. In 1950, after nearly 40 years at sea, she finally retired to Great Ashfield, Suffolk. Here's the most fascinating thing about Violet Jessop. She never learned to swim. Now remember at the beginning I promised some bonus material? Well, here it is. Wenman Wycombe Musgrave, known as Kit to his friends, was a Royal Navy officer. He holds a rather unique distinction, and no one to this day has shared it with him. On the morning of 22 September 1914, he was serving as a midshipman or junior officer aboard the HMS Aboukir. The Aboukir was an armored cruiser on patrol with two others in an area known as the Broadfort Teens off the Dutch coast. Due to heavy weather, their normal escort of destroyers had been forced to seek calmer waters. The three cruisers were about 2,000 yards apart with lookouts and guns manned in case a submarine was spotted. The German submarine U-9 had been forced to submerge and wait out the weather. When the system passed over, the destroyers were en route to resume escort duties, but they were a very long distance off yet. U-9 had orders to attack merchant shipping. Surfacing and seeing three unescorted cruisers, the order was given to fire a torpedo. The Aboukir was struck around 6:20 that morning. At first, the captain thought they had struck a mine and ordered the other two cruisers to close and collect the wounded men from the sinking ship. Soon the ship was listing, and counter-flooding did not right the ship. The abandoned ship order was given. Kit jumped into the ocean and soon learned just how hard he would have to swim to escape the suction created by a sinking vessel. He swam for his life. He did eventually make it to the sister ship, the HMS Hogue, another armored cruiser of the same class. No sooner did he mount the deck of the Hogue than the U-9 struck with two torpedoes around 6:55, just as the Aboukir was going under. The third sister ship, the HMS Cressy, was warned to look for a periscope. Kit was soon swimming again as anything buoyant was thrown into the water for the men to cling to as the Hogue now began to also sink. Kit swam toward the Cressy and was helped on board. It was as futile as the first rescue he received, as at 7:20 U-9 fired an aft torpedo into the Cressy, and at 7:30, having come about, fired her last torpedo at Cressy, ensuring her fate. Kit was once again swimming, this time with no rescue vessel in sight. He found some driftwood and soon fell unconscious. While in that state, he was spotted by a Dutch trawler and rescued. Kit Wycombe Musgrave now holds the singular distinction of being the only man ever to be aboard three ships which were torpedoed and sunk in a single day. In fact, the whole encounter was completed in under an hour and a half. When World War II broke out, Kit re-enlisted in the Royal Navy and was given the rank of commander. And there you have it, the story of people who survived multiple ship sinkings, some of them still notable in the popular memory more than a century later. Each of these people had one thing in common. After seeing their ship sunk, they got back on board another and started sailing again. While this episode started out to be about Violet Jessop alone, as I discovered these other stories, I had to include them. It really does show what a small world we live in and how lives are often interconnected even if we don't necessarily realize it. If you liked this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to be alerted to more content from this channel. Then tell your friends and family who like weird history or unusual history. Comment if you have anything to add to these stories or just want to express your opinions about them. Until next time, my friends, this is Seraphim with me, myself, and iHistory signing off.